Hello guys, let's go about the Merchant of Venice. This is in easy English for your understanding and it's also been shortened. The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare. At the time when the city of Venice in Italy was rich and famous, one of her chief citizens was a merchant named Antonio. He was well known for his kindness. He had many friends, among them a young Venetian nobleman called Bassanio. Although he came from a noble family, Bassanio was poor and spent more money than he could afford in order to live the kind of life he liked. But Antonio loved him and lent or gave him money whenever he needed it. For the merchant of Venice was a rich man who owned many valuable ships which traded with foreign countries. Now Bassanio loved a rich and noble young lady named Portia, whose father had recently died and left her all his money. So rich, beautiful, and clever was she that princes and noblemen were continually offering to marry her. These visitors, because they were rich and noble, knew how to make a fine show before the lady by arriving at her house with expensive presents and finely dressed servants. But Bassanio, who was poor, could not afford to buy fine presents, and he was afraid that the lady would not like him because he was poor, and so would refuse to marry him. Bassanio went to Antonio and told him of his difficulty. The lady, he said, seems to enjoy my visits, and I think she might be willing to marry me if only I could make myself look as rich as the other visitors. Would you help me to do this, Antonio, by lending me 3,000 ducats? I am always ready to help you, Bassanio, said Antonio, but I have no money to spend just now. All my ships are at sea, but I shall have plenty of money when they come back, so I'll borrow the money from Shylock, the moneylender, until then. Shylock the Jew was a miser, the best known moneylender in Venice. He was not liked by the people because he was a hard man who demanded a high rate of interest and showed no mercy to those who could not pay back the money borrowed from him. Now Shylock hated Antonio partly because Antonio showed his dislike for Shylock's hard character, but chiefly because Antonio himself often lent money without asking any interest on it. And that, of course, spoiled Shylock's business. So Shylock waited for the day when he could harm Antonio. Not knowing that Shylock hated him in this way, Antonio went with his friend Bassanio to borrow 3,000 ducats. I shall be able to pay it back with interest, said Antonio to Shylock, as soon as my ships come to port. As you know, they are now at sea and will shortly arrive home with valuable cargoes. At first, Shylock seemed unwilling to lend the money. Your ships may be destroyed by storms before they reach Venice, he said, and then you will be unable to repay the money. But as they talked together, the clever wicked Jew thought of a way of harming Antonio. Why should I lend you any money? He asked, turning to Antonio, when you are always calling me a dog and treating me with scorn. However, I am willing to be friends with you, and as you sometimes lend money without asking any interest, I'll do the same for you, to show that I too can be friendly and generous. Antonio was very surprised to hear the money lender's kind offer. Then Shylock went on, just for a joke, Antonio. We'll agree that if you do not repay me, I shall take a pound of your flesh to be cut from any part of your body that I choose. Antonio laughed and agreed and seemed much amused by the whole business. Bassanio told Antonio not to agree to what Shylock asked, but Antonio treated the whole matter as a joke. So the three men went to a lawyer and signed a paper to say that if Antonio did not repay Shylock with money, within 3 months Shylock was to be allowed to cut off a pound of flesh from any part of his body he chose. Antonio then took the money from Shylock and gave it to Bassanio. Bassanio now bought some fine clothes, collected some servants, and prepared to visit Belmont where Portia lived. Now Portia's father, before he died, had thought for helping his daughter to choose the right husband. He had had three small boxes made of different metals. The first was of gold, the second of silver, and the last of lead. One of them contained a picture of Portia. It was her father's wish that his daughter should marry the first man who rightly guessed in which box the picture lay. But each man must promise that if he guessed wrong, he would never ask any woman to marry him. Many men, when they heard about this, went away without daring to guess at all. Of the few who had tried, none had so far guessed right. One of them, a prince from Morocco, had chosen the golden box because he thought that only gold was good enough to hold a picture of anyone so beautiful as Portia. But when he opened it, he found a terrible picture of death inside, so he went sadly away. The next man to guess was the Prince of Aragon in Spain. He liked the look of the silver box. On this box were written the words, "Who chooses me will get what he deserves." These words pleased him, for he thought to himself, "Good world if everyone got what he deserved, and if I do not deserve to win this lady, I have no right to marry her. But surely I do deserve this lady. I had no right to marry her, but surely I do deserve her. Let me see." He opened the silver box, but when he looked in, he saw a picture, not of the beautiful Portia, but of a mad fool. So he too went away disappointed. After several men had come and gone away disappointed, Portia heard that Bassanio had arrived. There came with him a friend called Graziano, who was in love with Nerissa, Portia's maid. He had come to ask her to marry him, just as Bassanio had come to ask Portia. When Bassanio arrived, Portia received him very kindly, for she liked him far more than any of the other men, and she was ready to marry him. So she felt worried and that anxious to think that he, like the others, would probably choose the wrong box. Indeed, she begged him to wait for a while before choosing, but when Bassanio said that he would prefer to do it at once, he too was shown the three boxes of gold, silver, and lead. Bassanio considered for a long time before choosing. Either the gold or the silver box must be the right one, he thought, but no, so many people have and things try to make themselves look fine and beautiful when they're really ugly and bad. I'll choose the lead one. Portia watched him make the right guess with joy and delight, and with equal joy Bassanio opened the box and saw inside it the picture of Portia. Bassanio then turned to Portia to see if she too was as pleased as he was, for he was still not quite certain that she wished to have him for her husband. At once Portia told him of her love for him. She then took a ring off her finger and gave it to Bassanio, telling him that if he ever gave the ring away, their love would come to an end. Bassanio accepted the ring with joy and said that he would guard it as if it were his life. In this way, Portia and Bassanio promised to be faithful to each other. Bassanio's friend, Graziano, and Portia's maid, Nerissa, were in the room at the same time, and had seen all that had happened. Graziano now came forward and said that he wished them joy in their marriage, and that he and Nerissa wished to be married at the same time. Wishing them much happiness, Portia and Bassanio agreed at once. But now something happened which made them all very troubled. A messenger came bringing a letter to Bassanio from his friend, the merchant Antonio. As Bassanio read the letter, Portia saw him turn pale. the letter contained bad news. She asked quickly what was the matter. So Bassanio told her about the money he had borrowed and how Antonio had promised to give Shylock a pound of his flesh if he could not repay him by a certain day. This letter showed that all Antonio's hopes had been disappointed. My ships are lost, he wrote, and I have now to pay the Jew according to our bond, and since in paying him it is impossible that I should live, I much wish to see you at my death. The messenger who brought the letter then told them that the day when Antonio was supposed to repay the 3,000 ducats had passed, and that Shylock had sent again and again to the Duke of Venice, who dealt with such matters, asking him for justice. And so poor Antonio was now in prison waiting for his trial. When Portia heard this unhappy story, she wanted to give all the help she could. She said that she would repay several times the 3,000 ducats that were owed to Shylock, and she asked Bassanio to go and help his friend as soon as possible. Only they must be married before everything else. So all four went at once to church and were married. Bassanio and Graziano then left their wives and went straight back to Venice. But as soon as they had left, Portia began to think how she could save Antonio's life because she loved her husband. She decided to do everything she could to help his friends. She therefore sent a letter to a cousin of hers, a well-known and clever lawyer, asking for advice. She asked him to send her his counselor's robes, which he wore when he gave counsel in a court of justice. Her friend Dr. Bellaria at once sent her the robes and advised her in what a counselor should do in court, and in what way she should defend Antonio. Portia at once decided what she would do. To her friends and servants, she said that she was going to spend a few quiet days in a monastery until her husband returned. Then she called her friend Nerissa and told her about her plan. They both dressed themselves in men's clothes and started for Venice. Meanwhile, Bassanio and Graziano had reached Venice and had entered the court of justice, for the trial was due to begin. When the time came, the Duke of Venice entered and took his seat. Antonio the prisoner was brought in, and the Duke called for Shylock. When Shylock entered, the Duke begged him to give up his cruel demand and not to take a pound of Antonio's flesh. But Shylock would not listen to the Duke. Then Bassanio offered to pay him not only the 3,000 ducats, but twice the amount if he would let Antonio go. Still, Shylock would not be merciful. The laws of Venice, he said, allow me to demand a pound of Antonio's flesh because he has not repaid the money on the right day. Now, thought Shylock to himself, at last I shall have my revenge on this proud Christian merchant for all the scorn he has shown me. And he laughed to himself. Now it happened that the Duke had sent for a learned lawyer to advise him about this difficult case. And the man he had written to was the same Dr. Bellaria who had given his advice and his ropes to Portia. Before giving judgment in the case, the dukes decided to wait for the lawyer. It may be, he thought, that so learned a man can find a way of saving Antonio's life. Just as he decided this, a man came in saying that he brought a letter from Dr. Bellaria. In this, the doctor wrote that he was ill and could not therefore come to the court himself, so he asked that a young friend of his, a Dr. Balthazar, might be allowed to come instead. The Duke gave his permission and invited the young doctor to come in. The clerk who brought the letter for the Duke was really Nerissa, Portia's maid, dressed as a man. You have probably guessed who Dr. Balthazar was, although he was surprised to see how young the learned lawyer was. The Duke invited him to defend Antonio. Portia, for it was she, turned to Shylock and begged him to show mercy to Antonio. Mercy, she said, brings a blessing to him who shows mercy and to him who receives. But Shylock would not listen to her. All I ask, he said, is the payment of what is owed to me. But, asked Portia, can he not pay back the sum you lent him? Bassanio quickly said, he can pay this and more, for I can pay it for him 10 times over. He begged the counsellor to set the law aside his wants. To do a great right, said he, do a little wrong. No, answered Portia, this cannot be done, for if we set the laws aside now, others may follow this bad example, and the country will suffer if it neglects its own laws. Shylock was delighted when he heard this answer, and he thought that he would now win his case. He praised the wise young judge and looked at Antonio. Portia then asked to see the written agreement. Having read it, she agreed that Shylock should claim his pound of flesh. So she turned towards Antonio and commanded him to bare his breast. At this, Shylock, who was sure at last that he would have his revenge upon Antonio, called out, O noble judge, O excellent young man. Antonio, thinking that he was about to die, said goodbye to his friend Bassanio and begged him to tell Portia why he had died. Bassanio, in his unhappiness, replied that there was nothing he would not give, his own life or even his wife, to save Antonio if he could. Now, said Portia to Shylock, take what is owed to you. Cut from this man's breast the pound of flesh. Shylock, his knife ready in his hand, moved forward to cut out Antonio's heart. O learned judge, he said, O learned judge, and to Antonio, come, prepare. But before he could drive his knife into Antonio's body, Portia stopped him. Wait, she said, there is something else. This bond allows you no drop of blood. The words say clearly a pound of flesh. But if in cutting it you spill 1 drop of blood, then by the laws of Venice all your property shall belong to the state of Venice. Shylock stood quite still. He was so surprised and angry that he could scarcely move. Is that the law? He asked. Portia offered to show him the law on the subject by which those who caused blood to flow unlawfully were punished by having their property taken by the state. Now it was Graziano, saying how angry Shylock was, who cried out, O learned judge, take note, Jew, a learned judge. Shylock then remembered Bassanio's offer to pay back the money 3 times over. I take your offer then, he said to Bassanio. Pay back 3 times what I lent Antonio and let him go. Bassanio, delighted at Antonio's escape from death, at once held out the money to Shylock, but Portia stopped him. Shylock should have the pound of flesh and nothing more. O Jew, cried Graziano, laughing at him again, an upright judge, a learned judge. Come, take your pound of flesh, Shylock, said Portia. A pound, no more, no less, but no drop of blood. Why do you hesitate? Shylock now thought that he might at least get back the money he had lent. Give me back the sum which I lent and let me go. Here it is, said Bassanio, offering him 3,000 ducats. But no, Portia would not allow that. A little while ago, Shylock had refused the money when it had been offered to him, so now he should have nothing. The angry Shylock was about to leave the court when Portia called him back. Wait, she said. There is a law which says that if a foreigner plans to kill a Venetian citizen, half his property goes to that citizen and the other half to the state, and the Duke may order any other punishment he thinks right. So kneel to him and beg for mercy. Shylock, who a little time before had refused all mercy to Antonio, could not now expect mercy for himself, but the Christian Duke was more merciful than the Jewish moneylender. That you may see how different is our spirit from yours. He said, I'll give you your life before you ask for it, but that your wealth goes to Antonio and half to the state. And now the good merchant showed mercy to the Jew. I will not take my share of Shylock's wealth, he said, but Shylock will become a Christian. Shylock was also forced to sign a paper leaving his money after his death to his daughter Jessica and to her husband Lorenzo, who was afraid, was also Antonio's friend. A little time before that, Jessica had run away from her father and married Lorenzo secretly. For this, Shylock had threatened to leave none of his money to her. The Jew now knew that he must obey Portia's and Antonio's commands. "I'm ill," he cried. "Let me go home. Send the paper up to me and I'll sign it." So the Duke let Shylock go and the trial came to an end. During the trial, though they were extremely surprised to see how young and wise the lawyer was, neither Bassanio nor any of his friends suspected he was Portia. So cleverly had she changed her voice and her appearance. When the trial was over, Bassanio and Antonio wished to show how thankful they were to the judge. "Please accept the 3,000 ducats due to Shylock," begged Antonio, but Portia would not accept the money. When Bassanio again pressed her to accept something from him, Portia thought that she might play a joke upon her husband. "Since you praise me so much," she said, "give me your gloves." And when Bassanio took off his gloves and showed his hand, "As a sign of your love, that ring on your finger." When Portia asked him for his ring, Bassanio could not help drawing his hand away, for it was the ring given him by Portia when she promised to marry him, and he had promised never to give it away. So at first he pretended that so small a present was not worth giving. Portia asked his wives who had made him promise never to give it away. That, replied Portia, is a common excuse of men when they do not want to give a present. Your wife will not be angry with you long when she knows how well I have deserved the ring. Portia with Nerissa, her clerk, was about to leave them when Antonio persuaded Bassanio to give up the ring, and Bassanio, ashamed to seem unthankful, gave the ring to Portia. Nerissa also cleverly managed to persuade Graziano to give her the ring which he had received from her and had promised never. After leaving Venice, Portia and Nerissa went as quickly as possible to Belmont in order to arrive before their husbands. Soon afterwards, the two entered with Antonio. Bassanio at once introduced Antonio to his wife. "This is the friend," he said, "to whose help I owe so much." While Portia was welcoming Antonio to her house, they saw Graziano and Nerissa crawling in a corner of the room. "What?" cried Portia. "Quarreling already? What is the matter?" "It is about a ring which Nerissa gave me," Graziano explained. "A ring which had the words cut on it, 'Love me and leave me not.'" "I'm not angry because the ring was valuable," replied Nerissa, "but because Graziano promised faithfully to keep it and now he has given it away to a judge's clerk. He should never have done that." Portia was now determined to have her joke against her husband. Of course, Graziano was about to give away his wife's first present. "I too gave my husband a ring and made him promise to keep it. If he had given that ring away, I should indeed be angry with him." Then Graziano said, "But Bassanio, he gave it to the counselor who asked him for it. And then the boy, his assistant, begged me for my ring." When she heard this, Portia pretended to be very angry and asked Bassanio, "What ring did you give? Not that one, I hope, which you received from me?" Bassanio, feeling very unhappy to see his wife so angry, had to admit that he had given the ring away. "If only you understood how unwillingly I gave the ring, and to whom I gave it and why." But Portia still pretended to be angry and said that doubtless Bassanio had given it to some woman. Bassanio, thinking that he had really hurt Portia's feelings, said that he had given it to the lawyer because he was so grateful to him for saving Antonio's life. "If you had been there," he said, "I think that you would have begged me to give him the ring." Then Antonio turned to Portia and said, "I'm the unhappy cause of these quarrels. Do not treat this so seriously," replied Portia. Then taking the ring from her bag, she said, "Here then, Give him this ring and tell him to keep it better than he kept the other. Do not treat this so seriously, replied Portia. Then taking the ring from her bag, she said, here then, give him this ring and tell him to keep it better than he kept the other. So Antonio passed the ring to Bassanio, who looked at it and was extremely surprised to see that it was the ring he had given away. Portia then showed her husband the letter from Dr. Valerio, and so he learned that the clever lawyer was really Portia, his wife. Great was his surprise and delight to find that his own wife, by her courage and wisdom, had saved the life of his dear friend Antonio. Shortly afterwards, Antonio learned good news about his own affairs. Portia handed him some letters which had just arrived. From these, he had returned to Venice with valuable cargoes. Antonio was a wealthy man again, and thus ended this strange story of the merchant of Venice. In good news to the merchant and laughter between wives and husbands over the joke of the wheels. Please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.